Fin September 12, 2024, Los Angeles, California. The morning sun was just beginning to break over the sprawling city, casting a golden hue over the luxurious mansion nestled in the hills. Everything looked perfect. But inside that house something was very wrong. Emma Carter was gone. Her car was parked neatly in the driveway. Her purse lay untouched on the kitchen counter, her phone charging beside it. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken glass, no forced entry. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. But people don't just disappear, especially not the wife of NFL superstar Jason Carter. The news spread like wildfire, igniting social media, splashing across every major news outlet. Wife of NFL star reported missing, last seen at home, read the headlines. Friends and fans were stunned, pouring out messages of hope, prayers and questions. Jason Carter stood before the cameras, his eyes red, his voice cracking as he pleaded, "Emma, if you're out there, please come home." He looked every bit the devastated husband, his pain raw, his grief palpable. But behind those eyes there was something else. Something unsettling. Detective Maya Thompson watched the press conference from her office, her fingers drumming on her desk. She'd seen that look before. It wasn't grief. It was fear. Fear of being caught. The investigation was just beginning, but Maya knew one thing for certain: people don't just disappear without a reason. And she was going to find out what that reason was. As the sun continued to rise, casting long shadows over the Carter mansion, one question hung heavy in the air. Where was Emma? And the more terrifying question, did Jason know more than he was saying? In September 12, 2024, Los Angeles, California, the world saw Jason Carter as the embodiment of success, an NFL superstar with a career built on raw talent, charm, and an unbeatable smile. To the public, he was perfect. The golden boy who made it big, married to his college sweetheart Emma Carter. Together, they were the power couple. Beautiful, wealthy, adored by millions. Their social media accounts were filled with snapshots of a dream life, vacations in the Maldives, charity galas, smiling family portraits. Every picture painted a story of happiness. Every post screamed perfection. But behind those flawless smiles, darkness brewed. Emma Carter had learned to play her role well. She was the loving wife, the supportive partner who stood by Jason's side at every game, every event. But the truth was much more complicated. Late at night, when the cameras were off and the world wasn't watching, their house felt like a prison. Emma would sit alone in the massive living room, staring at her phone, waiting, always waiting. Jason's work meetings ran late, his practices longer than usual, but the perfume on his clothes didn't smell like the gym. Her suspicions grew. Friends whispered about his flirtations at parties, his secretive phone calls. But every time she confronted him, Jason would smile, that charming smile, the one that melted millions of hearts, and dismiss her concerns as paranoia. "You're overthinking, Emma. I'm just working hard. It's all for us." And she wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. But the cracks were starting to show. Behind the facade of perfection, their marriage was crumbling. Jason's temper flared more often. His absences became longer, his excuses thinner. Emma felt herself slipping, losing who she was, becoming just another accessory to Jason's perfect image, a prop in his fairy tale. Then came the messages, anonymous texts that appeared on Emma's phone late at night. "Do you really know where he is? Check his hotel receipts. He's not the man you think he is." At first she ignored them, brushing them off as cruel pranks. But the details were too precise, too specific to be lies. They knew too much. One night, after yet another late meeting, Emma did something she'd never done before. She checked his phone. Hidden under a fake name, she found the messages. Flirtations, promises, late-night rendezvous. Her hands shook, her heart breaking with each line she read. It was real, all of it, the lies, the betrayals. The other women. Jason Carter, the perfect husband, was living a double life. Emma's world shattered that night. The man she loved, the man she thought she knew, was a stranger. She felt the walls closing in, the weight of his lies suffocating her. She wanted to scream, to run, to escape. But where would she go? Who would believe her? Jason was America's hero, the golden boy, the NFL star who could do no wrong. And she was just his wife. A role she had played so well, she had almost convinced herself it was real. The next morning, Jason was all smiles, kissing her cheek before heading off to practice. "Love you, babe," he said casually, his eyes warm, his voice smooth. As if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just shattered her heart. Emma watched him leave, the words stuck in her throat. She wanted to confront him, to scream, to demand answers, but she stayed silent. Fear paralyzed her. Fear of losing everything. Fear of losing him. But as the door closed behind him, something inside her changed. The pain turned into anger. The betrayal morphed into resolve. She wouldn't stay silent anymore. Emma picked up her phone, her hands still trembling as she dialed the number. It was time to find out the truth. No matter how painful it was, but Emma had no idea just how deep Jason's lies went, or how dangerous the truth could be. As the sun dipped behind the hills of Los Angeles, casting long shadows over the mansion, one question lingered in the air. Did Jason know she was about to expose him? Or worse, was he already planning to silence her? In September 13th, 2024, Emma Carter sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. She stared at the building in front of her, a luxury high-rise downtown. It was elegant, discreet, and completely unfamiliar. She watched as Jason Carter walked out, laughing, his arm around a woman who wasn't his wife, young, beautiful, and impossibly glamorous. They looked like the perfect couple, smiling as they strolled hand in hand down the street. Jason looked happy, happier than Emma had seen him in years. The truth hit her like a punch to the stomach. This wasn't just an affair, it was a double life, a secret world she never knew existed. The texts had led her here, the anonymous messages that haunted her every night. Check his hotel receipts. He's not the man you think he is. She had finally followed the clues, and now she was watching the man she loved with another woman, laughing like she never existed. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not now. She started the engine, driving away before Jason could see her. Her heart shattered, her world crumbling around her, but the pain quickly turned to anger, burning, white-hot anger. How long had this been going on? How many lies had he told? How many other women were there? Who else knew Emma needed answers? And she wasn't going to stop until she got them. She went home, her mind racing, replaying every conversation, every late night, every excuse. It all made sense now. The late meetings, the secret phone calls, the distance between them. It was all because of her. The woman who was living the life Emma thought was hers. But the more Emma dug, the darker the truth became. She found the hidden phone, the one Jason kept buried in his gym bag. It was locked, but Emma had watched him enough times to know his passcode, a 1234. So predictable. And that's when the lies unraveled. Text messages, photos, videos. Jason's affair wasn't just a fling. It was a relationship, a second life. He was paying her rent, taking her on vacations, buying her gifts that Emma never saw, expensive jewelry, designer clothes, a life of luxury that he had never shared with his own wife. He was leading a double life, and he was using Emma's money to do it. But that wasn't the worst part. Not by a long shot. The woman wasn't just his mistress, she was his publicist. The woman responsible for crafting Jason's perfect image, for keeping his reputation spotless. She wasn't just in his bed, she was in his business, and she knew everything. Emma's blood ran cold as she realized the depth of the betrayal. Jason wasn't just cheating on her, he was using her, using their marriage, their life as a cover for his own lies. The money, the gifts, the vacations. It was all a lie. Her life was a lie. Emma felt sick, the room spinning as the reality of her situation sank in. She had trusted him. She had believed in him, stood by his side, defended him, loved him, and he had played her for a fool. But the texts kept coming. He's not who you think he is. You don't know what he's capable of. Emma was starting to believe them. The more she uncovered, the darker the picture became. Jason wasn't just cheating. He was hiding something. Something bigger. Something dangerous. There were hidden bank accounts, money being funneled to offshore, locations, thousands of dollars disappearing every month. And then there were the messages, conversations that didn't sound like flirtation. They sounded like threats. The texts were vague but sinister, talking about payments, keeping people quiet, protecting his image. Jason wasn't just lying to Emma, he was lying to the world. And then she found the name, a name that kept coming, up in every conversation. Michael Torres. A name she didn't recognize, but one that clearly meant something to Jason. Something dangerous. Emma's heart raced as she pieced it together. Michael Torres was blackmailing Jason. The money, the lies, the secrecy. It was all to protect his career. But what did Michael know? What was Jason so desperate to hide? Emma's mind spun, the pieces falling into place. The late nights, the anger, the lies. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about power, about control. Jason was hiding something big. And Emma was starting to understand just how far he would go to keep his secret safe. But as she stared at the messages, the photos, the money transfers, she realized one terrifying truth. Jason knew she was getting closer. The last message sent just hours before she followed him to the high-rise. She's starting to ask questions, I'll handle it. Emma's blood ran cold. Handle it? Did that mean her? Jason was planning something, and if she wasn't careful, she'd end up just like the money, gone without a trace. Emma knew she had to leave. She had to run. But as she grabbed her bag, her phone buzzed with one final text. Too late, Emma? She froze, her heart stopping in her chest. Jason knew. He always knew. And he was already one step ahead. In September 14th, 2024, the sun was just beginning to rise when Jason Carter made the call. His voice was calm. Almost too calm. "My wife is missing," he said, his words precise, rehearsed. "She never came home last night." The dispatcher asked the standard questions. "When did you last see her? Where was she going? Did she mention anyone she would be with?" Jason answered every question without hesitation. "She went to visit a friend. I expected her back by midnight. I fell asleep waiting. When I woke up, she was still gone." His voice cracked, just enough to sound authentic. "I'm worried something's happened to her." Within hours, news of Emma Carter's disappearance spread like wildfire. The wife of an NFL superstar missing without a trace. The nation was captivated. The perfect couple's perfect life shattered by an unthinkable tragedy. Friends and neighbors gathered outside the Carter mansion, whispering, praying, crying. Jason stood among them, his face pale, his eyes hollow. He played his part well. The grieving husband, desperate to find his missing wife. But behind those hollow eyes, Jason was calm. Too calm. Detective Maya Thompson watched him closely, her instincts tingling. Something didn't feel right. She'd seen grief before. This wasn't it. This was control. Maya questioned Jason, watching every movement, every expression. "When did you last speak to Emma?" she asked, her voice steady. Jason looked down, his hands trembling. "Yesterday morning, we argued about the usual stuff. Work, schedules. She left angry. I never thought she wouldn't come back." His voice broke, his shoulders sagging. Perfectly performed. But Maya noticed the small details, the way his eyes darted when he spoke, the slight hesitation before answering each question. He was lying. She just didn't know why. As the investigation intensified, the house was searched, every room meticulously examined. No signs of a struggle, no blood, no broken glass, no missing belongings. Emma's purse was on the kitchen counter. Her phone was charging. It was as if she had simply vanished. But people don't just disappear, not without help. Maya looked at the security footage from the mansion, watching the screen with narrowed eyes. There was a glitch, a 3-minute gap in the recording from the night before, a gap that shouldn't have been there. She rewound the footage, watching Jason enter the house at 10:27 p.m., alone. But when the camera resumed at 10:30 p.m., his clothes were different. His shirt was untucked, his hair disheveled. Something had happened in those 3 minutes. Maya's fingers tightened around her pen. He was hiding something. The footage from outside the mansion showed Emma's car in the driveway all night. It never moved. But a neighbor's security camera caught something else. A black SUV parked 2 blocks away. The driver was never seen. But the SUV left at 10:45 p.m. 15 minutes after the footage glitched, Maya traced the plates. They were fake. A dead end. But the questions kept growing. Why would Jason lie about the last time he saw Emma? What was he hiding? And why was he so calm? The media frenzy continued, the public gripped by the mystery. "Where is Emma Carter?" The headlines screamed. Friends and family were interviewed, all painting a picture of a happy marriage, the perfect couple. But Maya wasn't convinced. Perfect is a lie. Then came the anonymous tip, a voice distorted by technology, barely a whisper. "Check his accounts. Check the transfers." Maya didn't hesitate. She subpoenaed Jason's financials, combing through every transaction, and that's when she found it. The offshore accounts. Hundreds of thousands of dollars funneled out of the country, unaccounted for. The money trail led to a name she didn't recognize, Michael Torres. But the more she dug, the darker the truth became. Michael Torres wasn't just a business associate. He was an enforcer, a fixer who made problems disappear just like Emma. Maya's heart raced as she pieced it together. Jason was in trouble. Deep trouble, gambling debts, blackmail, threats. He wasn't just a cheating husband, he was a desperate man. And desperate men did dangerous things. The anonymous tip had been right. Jason had paid Michael Torres, but for what? To silence Emma? To make her disappear, or worse? Maya's gut twisted. Jason didn't just lie about Emma's disappearance. He orchestrated it, planned every detail. The argument, the timeline, the perfect alibi. It was all a script, and he was playing the role of a lifetime. But if Jason was the puppet master, then where was Emma? Was she still alive? Or was she already gone, buried somewhere no one would ever find her? Maya looked at Jason, standing before the cameras, tears streaming down his face. He was a master manipulator, a performer. But his act was slipping. She could see it now. The flicker of fear in his eyes. The way his jaw clenched when the reporters asked about his alibi. the way his hands trembled just for a moment when they mentioned Michael Torres. Jason was unraveling. And Maya was going to be there when he finally broke. But as she watched him play the grieving husband, one question burned in her mind. Where was Emma? And the more terrifying question, was she even alive? In September 15th, 2024, the sun dipped below the horizon as Detective Maya Thompson stood outside the mansion, her eyes fixed on the place where Emma Carter had last been seen. The house was quiet, too quiet, like a tomb. Inside, Jason Carter was sitting in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his eyes red from sleepless nights. He was losing control. The pressure was mounting, the questions becoming more pointed, the whispers growing louder. People were starting to doubt him. He could feel it, his perfect image slipping. The world was watching, waiting for him to crack. But he wouldn't. He couldn't. Not when he had come so far, not when he had so much to lose. But as the shadows lengthened outside his window, Jason knew he was running out of time. Maya was closing in. He could see it in her eyes every time she questioned him, every time she showed up unannounced. She didn't believe him, and she wouldn't stop until she found the truth that Jason was desperately trying to bury. Maya stood at his door, her presence heavy, her questions sharp. "Where were you the night Emma disappeared?" she asked again, her voice firm, unyielding. Jason's eyes flickered, his jaw tightening. "I told you I was home, alone." Maya's lips curved into a cold smile. Convenient, no witnesses. He felt the anger rise, but he forced it down, his fingers tightening around his glass. "I've already answered your questions, Detective. I have nothing more to say." Maya leaned in, her eyes never leaving his. "You have nothing to say? Or you have too much to hide?" Jason's heart raced, but his face remained impassive. She was getting closer, too close. He had been so careful, planned every detail, covered every track. But there was one thing he hadn't accounted for. Maya's tenacity, her refusal to let go. She was relentless, and she was starting to see the cracks in his story. Maya pulled out her phone, her eyes still locked on his. "We found the black SUV." Jason's blood ran cold. The SUV, the one he had used to dispose of the evidence. The one he thought was untraceable, abandoned in a parking lot 3 miles from here, wiped clean, no prints, no DNA. Maya's smile widened. "But we did find a hair, long, blonde, just like Emma's." Jason's hand trembled, his glass clinking against the desk. She knew. Maya's voice dropped, cold and sharp. "You didn't expect that, did you?" Jason looked away, his mind racing. He had made a mistake, a small one, but enough, and Maya was like a shark. She smelled blood. He forced himself to stay calm, his voice steady. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen that SUV before." Maya stepped closer, her presence suffocating. "Lying won't help you, Jason, not anymore." She leaned in, her voice a whisper. "I know you did it. I just have to prove it." Jason's heart pounded, his world spinning. She was too close. He had to do something. Fast. Maya turned to leave, her footsteps echoing through the hallway. But she left the door open. A warning. A promise. She was coming back. Jason slammed his fist against the desk, his anger boiling over. Everything was falling apart. Emma's disappearance was supposed to be perfect, clean. But Maya was ruining everything. He poured himself another drink, his hands shaking. He needed to think. He needed to get control back. He needed to find that SUV. But as he lifted the glass to his lips, his phone buzzed. Her message. From an unknown number. She's still alive. The glass shattered on the floor, whiskey splattering across the carpet. Jason stared at the message, his blood turning to ice. It couldn't be. He was sure. He was careful. He had watched her die. But the messages kept coming. You think you're safe? Think again. I know what you did. Jason's fingers trembled as he dialed the number. It rang once, twice. Then, "You've reached Emma. Leave a message." His heart stopped. Emma's voice. But that was impossible. She was dead. Jason dropped the phone, stumbling back, his head spinning. Someone was playing with him, someone who knew the truth, someone who wanted him to pay. He looked around the room, his eyes wide, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Was she really dead? Or had he made a mistake? The walls seemed to close in, the shadows growing longer, darker. Emma was gone. He knew that. He was sure. But as his phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with one last message, Jason realized he was wrong. I'm coming home. The room spun, his vision blurring. Emma was alive, and she was coming for him. Jason's perfect plan was crumbling, and he was about to lose everything, because no matter how carefully you hide the truth, it always comes back. In September 16th, 2024, the mansion was eerily silent, shadows stretching long across the walls as night fell. Jason Carter sat alone in his study, the air heavy, suffocating. He hadn't slept in days, the messages wouldn't stop. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard Emma's voice, her laughter, her whispers, her cries. But she was dead. She had to be. He had made sure of it. But the texts kept coming, each one more chilling than the last. You can't hide from me. You thought I was gone, but I'm right here. Jason's phone buzzed again, the screen glowing in the darkness. Look outside. His heart stopped. Was it possible? Could she really be alive, or was someone playing a cruel game? He stood slowly, his body stiff, his mind racing. He needed to see, to prove to himself that it was just a prank, a cruel joke. Emma was gone. She couldn't be outside, but as he approached the window, his blood ran cold. A figure stood in the garden, half hidden by shadows. A woman, her long hair blowing in the wind, her face pale, her eyes locked on his. It was Emma. Jason stumbled back, his heart pounding, his mind spinning. This was impossible. He had watched her die, he had buried her. She was dead, but she was standing there, staring up at him, her face expressionless, her eyes hollow, like a ghost. The phone buzzed again. I'm coming inside. Jason's breath caught, his body frozen in fear. He turned, his eyes darting to the door. It was open. Just a crack. A creak echoed through the hallway. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Someone was in the house. His pulse raced, his body trembling. Emma was dead. This couldn't be real. It was impossible. But the footsteps grew closer, the air growing colder, the shadows deepening. She was coming for him. Jason grabbed his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed the number. It rang once, twice. Then, "You've reached Emma. Leave a message." Her voice, clear, soft, alive. He dropped the phone, his chest tightening, his vision blurring. This was a nightmare. It had to be. The footsteps stopped outside his door. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then, the door creaked open. Jason's breath hitched, his eyes locked on the figure standing in the doorway. Emma, pale, hollow-eyed, her face expressionless, her body draped in the same clothes she was wearing the night she disappeared. She stepped forward, her movements slow, deliberate, her eyes never leaving his. You're dead," Jason whispered, his voice shaking. I killed you." Emma tilted her head, her eyes cold, empty. "Did you?" Her voice was soft, haunting, echoing through the room. Or did you? I just want me dead. Jason stumbled back, his body trembling. This couldn't be real. It was impossible. He had buried her. He had made sure no one would ever find her. She was dead. But she was standing right in front of him, her eyes hollow, her voice cold. You thought you could get rid of me. She took another step forward, her face inches from his. You thought you could bury the truth? Jason's heart raced, his back hitting the wall. I did it for us, for our family. You were going to ruin everything. Emma's lips curved into a chilling smile. Ruin everything. You did that yourself, Jason. You and your lies, your secrets, your betrayals. The air grew colder. Jason's breath fogged before him, his body shivering. You're not real. Emma's eyes darkened, her voice dropping to a whisper. Aren't I? She reached out, her cold fingers brushing his cheek. I trusted you. I loved you. And you betrayed me. Jason's body shook, tears streaming down his face. I had no choice. You were going to expose everything, my deals, my debts. I had to protect myself. Emma's eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling. For you were supposed to protect me. The room grew colder, the shadows closing in. Jason felt his chest tighten, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She was dead. She had to be. But her fingers tightened around his throat, cold and unyielding. You killed me. Her voice echoed through the room, chilling, haunting. You killed me, and now you're going to pay. Jason struggled, his body thrashing, his vision darkening. He couldn't breathe. Her fingers tightened, her eyes cold, unforgiving. I trusted you, Jason, and you killed me. The shadows closed in, the cold consuming him. His vision blurred, his body growing heavy. He was dying, but as the darkness swallowed him, he heard her voice one last time. Now you know how it feels to be betrayed. His body went limp, his heart slowing, his breath fading. The cold was gone, the shadows retreated. He was alone. Jason collapsed to the floor, his body trembling, his chest heaving. Emma was gone, just like before, just like the night she died. He looked around, the room empty, the air warm again. She wasn't real, she was never real, she was dead. But as he looked down, he saw the bruises on his neck, finger-shaped bruises. Emma was dead. But her ghost was very much alive. And she wasn't done with him yet.